All right, good morning. Today we are going to be painting a banana, and I am so excited about painting this. I've already started the base layer of the banana, which I used a yellow color that was on one of the swatches. And what I'm using right now is a watercolor palette set that I have purchased and I intend to offer in my online shop. And if you enroll in the watercolor class, you will be receiving this small kit. So you can actually use the same colors that I'm using right now in order to paint this banana. I really intended this kit to be a starter edition for anyone who took the class, just because I think it's easier when you have the paints and you're ready to go. For me, the hardest thing about beginning with watercolor painting was figuring out which paints I wanted to use and then realizing that each tube was, like between $6 and $10. So it got really expensive if you wanted more than one color. So when I found this kit, it was pretty affordable, and I thought this would be awesome to offer for students who want to get started but don't want to spend a fortune. So what I did here is I used a very watered down flat wash for the background of the banana. And then I'm adding in some saturated tones where I feel like the sun is hitting, or the light source is hitting the banana more harshly. I want them to be warm and hot color zones. And I'm leaving other areas for the shadow regions. And the shadow regions are going to be cool colors that I mix in. So either a blue or a purple and a dark brown. So I really wanted to show what the dark sides of the banana are going to look like. This banana is intended to be one of those that sat on your table for a little while, not one of your perfect bananas without the spots. And I thought it'd be really fun to do a subject like this because for life drawing, it's a little bit more challenging. And I mentioned life drawing because life drawing sessions, when you have models that have freckles or they have, muscles and just different body type shapes, it's a lot more interesting to study painting or drawing them. And you really hone in on your skills when you do a more challenging subject. However, I do suggest a simple shape like a banana is a great way to start out. And I think you have a lot of fun with doing the banana. So here I'm pulling from the palette a color that I would say is similar to ultramarine, although I can't really match them because these palettes come from another country and they don't have the color coding that our watercolor tubes have, where they have the exact color that we're using. But I would say that it looks a little bit between like cerulean and ultramarine. Either way, it definitely works for what I'm doing here and for creating some dynamic shadows and picking a color that's complementary to the yellow. So now with any subject that you're painting, you want to have color harmony. And part of the reasoning behind adding the blue onto the banana in this respect is to show shadow. Typically the reflected shadow from the bottom where the subject touches the ground or surface, you would have a little bit of reflection of that color in the subject. So what I'm doing here is I'm just building up kind of a base of the shadow areas and lightly adding the blue where there would be a reflected shadow on the subject. I don't want to overdo it here because I really don't want that blue color to show through a lot in the final subject, but I do want to get a little bit of an inkling of that color. It really helps to tie in the color throughout the entire piece. And I think it'll look really nice when I add the dark brown over it. I'm also using a little bit of green. I think the green is definitely a natural color for bananas. If you are painting a banana, you might be thinking about the lifespan of the banana. If it's a fresh banana, you might be thinking, okay, it has touches of green, it has touches of warm yellow, cool yellow zones. Maybe it looks like it has white reflecting. You'll notice I avoided certain parts of the banana. This is a stylistic approach that I personally really like. I like to leave the highlights real bright. And then if they're too bright, I go back in and add more color, or I use a base layer over the entire subject and then darken the background or the shadows in the subject to really even out the tonal value. For this particular banana painting, I was really thinking about how this subject is a little bit more complex because it's an older banana. There are areas of it that are a little bit darker, but they're not necessarily in shadow. So depicting the darker areas of the banana was a little bit more of a challenge, just because I had to make the dark areas of the banana not necessarily the darkest areas of the banana. And I had to really, in order to create the form accurately, I had to think about where are the real shadows of the banana and which areas do I build up in order to create that three-dimensional look where the banana pops off the page, as opposed to being a very flat subject that just has tonal values that communicate to one another. You see I'm dropping back the accent and highlight areas of the banana, and I'm simultaneously darkening other areas. This is something that watercolor artists may or may not do. I know that sounds really vague and I just contradicted myself, but when I'm working on a painting, I will actually work with the lights and the darks at the same time. Most artists, from what I've seen, they'll build up layers of color, glazing and building up to different values in the painting. I find this to be a little bit challenging sometimes. I do that too, but I also, when working on still lifes, I will work on small areas of the subject and get them to a point where I've identified middle values or dark values, and then progress through the rest of the subject, because it gives me an idea of where I'm going with that painting. It gives me kind of a roadmap. Like I have a color that I can look at and go, okay, that's my dark value. So with this one, it was a little bit challenging just because the banana is older. So that meant I really had to think about how, yes, there are black spots on the banana, but that's not necessarily the darkest value on the banana. And these are all really great things to think about as you build up detail and you work with your brush and your spreading color, glazing, to think about really where your darkest dark is and where your lightest light is. I will sometimes take momentary pauses as I'm building up color. I didn't speed up this video because I did not want to give the impression that this piece took 30 minutes. This was actually a really long painting session where I tried to take the time to really build up the layers and show the entire process. So you'll notice that this video is excessively long, and I'm sorry about that, but I did want to show you exactly which colors you would use for each layer of the painting, and if you approach it the same way that I do, then this is how you... So another topic that we can discuss while I'm working on this banana is paintbrush. What paintbrush are you going to use? You'll notice that I am using this round 8, and it happens to be a Princeton Velvet Touch long round. I love this brush because the pointed tip on the brush is really exceptional for getting detail. You'll notice that I kind of bear down on the belly of the brush and I get low so that I can really regain control over the bristles and where the water is going. I also make sure to dab my paintbrush on a paper towel in order to make sure I don't have excessive water that's released onto the paper. And I also, I'm a totally impatient painter. So what I tend to do is I'll work on one area of the banana, I'll allow that to dry, and I'll simultaneously work on another area of the banana. So I might take those middle values in one area and apply them to another area. So I'm constantly thinking about where to disperse the colors. And also the amount of water that I'm using. It helps me to really get the water out of the brush. These Princeton brushes have really become my favorite brush. I have to tell you, I discovered them about a year ago and I have not gone back to any other brand of brush. The reason is because these brushes come in different widths and they're all styled the same. So they get a really good point at the end and they don't hold too much water. I don't know if you've seen some of those other brushes with the black bristles. They release a lot of water and people use them for hand lettering. I think they really do a beautiful job of painting skin and doing hand lettering and just different things with landscape work. But when it comes to doing fine detail on a still life, I always go back to the Princeton Velvet Touch brushes. And this black one in the video actually might be from their Aqua Elite line. It's the same style brush as the Princeton Velvet Touch, but the shape of the tip is a little more symmetrical. So you'll probably see that if you buy these, but they are definitely my favorite. I use the 8, 6, and the 4. They get a really great line and they don't put too much water down when you're doing like the little circles and dots and shadows. However, what I don't like them for is doing the shadow below the subject. They're actually not my favorite for that. I like using a flat tip brush, but we can talk about that later when we do some landscape painting. I'm really honing in on the edges of the banana now because I'm noticing that I need to create more form on this banana. It's not popping off the page enough and I don't feel like the angles of the banana are really showing through, so I'm working up more layers of color to really get this banana to be more dynamic. So you ever want to watch the Bob Ross painting videos from start to finish? Because the other day I was thinking about how I just want to do a crash session and watch all of them for nostalgia purposes. They're so like happy and feel good and just educational. And I really love watching his approach to painting because every painter really, they all have their own style and their own approach to painting something. And it's always like a problem solving thing where, your approach to solving a problem might be different from someone else's. You might be more creative or you might be more analytical. And I really just enjoy watching how he does his landscapes because they really are inspirational. And the color palette that he uses to achieve that dynamic realism, it's amazing. And I feel like it'd be really great to go watch all of them again. He's kind of an icon. I think in the art industry, we all know who he is and saw him at some point in our childhood, especially on TV. I remember flipping through and seeing his videos. So you'll notice right here, I'm starting to get into a problem zone where I'm building up the darker area in the background, which typically your background will be darker than your foreground, but that's not a hard and fast rule. But I'm having trouble with the values because the front area of the banana has a really, really dark zone, kind of like it almost looks like it's been dented, but it's actually just a black stripe that goes down the banana, down that curve. And it's really difficult because it looks kind of concave. If you're looking at the painting, it looks like that dark area falls backward, which is what darks are supposed to do. They're supposed to move back, and light is supposed to move forward in the painting. So you notice that I'm really trying to work through that problem right now as I build darker values in the areas that push backward on the subject. So I'm really like trying to build up the color on the other side of the banana. without losing the detail in the front. I really thought that this painting was not going to take me as long as it did. I thought I was going to be done like after 2 hours, and then, oh gosh, this painting took forever. I think because I had to stop and start quite a bit. When I get interruptions, I always stop the cam and I just take a pause, take a breather, use a restroom, refill coffee, and then go back to it. But yeah, I really thought this painting was just going to take me like an hour. But when you really get into the zone of painting and you're thinking about what you're doing and you're really concentrating on the process and the feeling, you get lost in the time and it doesn't really matter. I guess I just expected this to be easier to paint than it was. Right around here, I'm starting to realize that the tip of the banana is kind of like this black color. And I didn't really want to use black at first, but then I realized that mixing my own black might not be rich enough for this subject. So I do grab from the palette a lot for the black, and I mix it into the brown to kind of harmonize those two colors. In real life, if I were painting this with my Winsor & Newton paints, I would probably grab a couple different tubes of paint and mix my own black. I don't particularly use black when I paint. I use a lot of Payne's gray if I need a really rich dark color, or I will just mix the black myself based on the colors that I'm using in the painting. And again, that helps with color harmony. It's also a reason that I pulled the blue and put that in the banana as well. It's probably not something that a lot of artists would do, because if you add blue and yellow, it creates like a green color. But when I was actually looking at this banana, there was quite a bit of green in it, believe it or not. So I think that came off as successful. I also wanted to comment that I am not 100% happy with the way the shadow below the banana turned out. It was not a successful element of this banana, and I could have gone a lot farther with adding darker colors on the banana itself. I just was really worried about making it look muddy. So I held back a lot in painting this. I really wanted to have more detail in it and more depth, but I did feel a little bit shy because every time I've painted a banana in the past, I've used just yellows and like orange tones and just a touch of like brown or green, but really not this heavily brown in certain regions. I could have worked on this honestly for another probably 4 hours. There was so much detail in this banana that you could just keep working on it more and more and more, and just more layers of color to really pull some of the details forward. But I had to stop because we had somewhere to go that afternoon, and like all good things have to come to an end. This painting had to wrap up when I felt like it had gotten to a good point. And I really do feel like this painting was successful. This part does get a little bit monotonous as I'm, adding more and more depth to certain areas of the banana, and I'm really looking at which places really just needed more definition. And, like the top stem of the banana just looks a little bit flat. So I go back in and I just add more darks. The line of the banana below it, as I was looking at it on my desk, which was brown, it really did feel like it had a hard shadow under the banana. And, like I said before, I'm not crazy about how the shadow turned out. It's not my favorite thing. But I do like that I used the blue with this because it was a really unique color to match to this subject, the yellow and the blue. Another one that might be a little more complementary would be like a purple color. I love to match backgrounds that are complementary to the color of the subject. That to me is really exciting and kind of fresh, because usually you see like the very muted colors of a still life. And I've always kind of felt that that was really boring. A boring color palette just was not my style. So when I'm painting, I'm always rethinking how can I imagine these colors like in my style, and kind of spice it up a little bit with more saturation. But when you are doing a still life that's more realistic, you're going to want to think about how you probably are going to be going for a palette that is more realistic, and you might want to water down your colors, desaturate, or use a little bit of white watercolor in there to keep the realism of the subject, because when it gets too saturated, you can kind of tell. Your eye tells you that, no, this doesn't look right. This isn't really a realistic banana. But for my style, it really fits what I like to create and how I actually see subjects in real life. So when I'm painting saturated subjects, it's because I actually see that. And here I'm adding in a little bit more of like a peach tone to it, because I'm noticing that the light is really playing off the subject in a cool way. I wanted some warmer values in here. It really felt kind of like the banana was flat. It didn't look very alive. And this is just something that I like to do. I believe it's called anthropomorphism, where you merge like an animal and a human aspect. So here I'm kind of merging the human and fruit aspect, because I'm taking from skin tones and I'm adding that onto the banana. And that's kind of a trick that I've played around with for a really long time. It's something I'm kind of fascinated with, using kind of a Naples yellow skin tone to make the subject more exciting. I don't know why I like this so much. It's so bizarre, but I've thought about it a lot, because Naples yellow is my absolute favorite watercolor color that I use. It's always on my palette. It's something that really just has like a fleshy feeling to it, but not too much. It's not like a pink or a peach. It's just a very subdued, like earthy color and earthy tone that I would definitely say defines my color palette and is a staple in it. And I use it because of that fleshy feeling. I think it gives life to my paintings and it makes them vibrant and exciting, which is why I use it so much. But I would love to hear what you think down below. If there's a particular color that you use that you really feel just makes or breaks your paintings and gives them an element that makes you stand out from the crowd, I'd love to hear what that is down below in the comments. And even if it's just a color that you absolutely love, like it doesn't have to be in every painting that you do, but I would love to hear what that is too, because everyone has kind of a preference. Everyone has like a combination of colors that they use to achieve a certain effect. And yeah, I'd just love to hear what they are. So you'll probably notice that I have washed off my palette, and my palette is actually a ceramic dish that I bought at Home Goods. If you by chance are looking for a great solution for that, it is a great size. I did not buy it in an art store. It's an amazing size. It's really pretty, and it works amazing for painting. It's also really, really cheap. It's like $9. So if you do need one of these, just head over to Home Goods and go to their bathroom section. And that's where they have a bunch of these dishes. It's, I think, intended to be like a soap dish or just a medley of different objects that you have in your bathroom that you want to organize onto a dish. But it works great for this. Highly recommend it. I don't know about you, but I am going through palettes like crazy. I don't know what the deal is, but I find myself swapping out my palette over and over again, whether they just go bad or they get stained or whatever it is. Ceramic palettes are hands down the best, but I've just found that I'm really like, I don't know, weird about my palettes. I have to change them and switch them up all the time. I really hope you're enjoying this video, and watching me build up the darker areas of the banana tends to be the most satisfying part of this painting for me, at least from what I've found. And I just love this part of the painting because you get to the point where you're starting to feel ultimate satisfaction from watercolors. It looks more real, it's popping off the page, it's starting to have some more definition, it's feeling more dynamic, and I'm loving the colors. I'm actually really satisfied with the particular colors that I picked. And this part got just a teensy bit monotonous as I went in and I added each dark area just to give it a lot more detail and to move it forward off the page. I just really hope that you're enjoying this tutorial. If you need a breakdown of how I did it or how I did the sketch, there's also an article on my website, so you can check out thelastpigment.com. That site is going to be a major resource to anyone who is learning watercolor painting. I'm going to be posting a lot of tutorials on there, articles on every topic about watercolor painting that you might want to know or need to know if you're starting to learn. I just want to point out one thing right here before I continue. I definitely watered down the brown a lot as I came closer to the light source. I'm making sure it's not super saturated. I just want it to look like it is in the light, and you'll notice that a lot of subjects in the light look a lot lighter. I know that sounds really ironic, but yeah, that's a simple way of putting it. And so the effect that I achieve here is that I do the darker areas first, and then I water down the color a little bit, or I use the brush when it's a little bit used up and the paint's kind of bleeding out of the brush and almost gone, and then I use the dry brush effect. I am so excited for the next tutorial that I'm going to be doing. I just have to tell you, someone on my Gab watercolor group actually requested that I paint this succulent painting, and I painted it about 2 weeks ago, but I haven't had the chance to actually edit the video and put it out there. So that's going to be the next one that I do. It came as a special request, and it's going to be a full painting. So I'm hoping to do maybe one of these like live painting videos on Discord, or do just a full length video that I can offer on Patreon, because I really think that that would be a really awesome reward. Like if you happen to want to do a fruit that week and you want to watch someone actually do a painting, then you can just tune in and see the subject that I'm painting and watch the video, or paint along with me, which is always great. If you want to paint along to the video, please share whatever you create. I love seeing what people make. I've seen some really magical still life paintings lately where this one account, it's called, I think, Still Life, something like that. I'll have to pull up the handle and link it below. But the account posts a still life photo every single week. Yeah, still here, still life. And every week they post like a photograph, and then artists get to go paint it. And they share some of the artist paintings on their account, which is super cool because all of the artists do the same still life every week in their style, and it's really fun to see just the style of what everyone creates. And it can be really inspirational because you might think, oh, I never thought of doing it that way, or I never thought of using those colors. Like for instance, on this banana still life, I could have added in more pieces of fruit. I could have really changed the composition of the painting. I could have used different colors in the background, like purple. I could have picked an entirely different palette, like I could paint this in blue. There are so many different ways to approach doing still lifes, and it's really fun to do these. So I think maybe for the next one, let me know what you would like me to paint for the next still life. I was thinking of focusing on still lifes this month and doing a few of those and practicing major subjects, because I am also building out my watercolor course right now and getting ready to launch that. So if there's something specific that you would like to see me paint or see how I approach painting it, just let me know in the comments below, and I will definitely do that because I'm really excited to see what everyone would like to learn or what everyone is struggling with learning. We're all here to support each other. So this is just, if you haven't found the watercolor group on Gab or MeWe, please check that out. There are a lot of cool people on there. I am so excited that I created that group. Since I've created it, has brought some sunshine into my life. I'm not gonna lie, I get to share work with other artists, and then I get to see their art, and it's really inspirational. It's really exciting, and you learn so much. It's a great place to ask questions. There's a lot of experienced artists in there who are really, really good at what they do. And I just personally think it is an amazing community. So if you haven't found that already, please check that out. I also wanted to mention that I've been toying with the idea of making a Discord account where I can do live paint sessions, but I want to get your feedback down below to see if that would be something that you think is a great reward. Like, would you want to see me live paint and be able to ask me questions and hang out on Discord for like a half an hour to an hour on a Friday and pick a particular day that everybody is available for that sort of thing? Let me know down below, because I've been trying to rethink my Patreon rewards tiers. And the reason I'm doing that is because more and more my client work has become time consuming, and I'm really trying to transition fully to art so that what I'm doing is offering more content to my viewers instead of relying mostly on client work for, monetary things. And I do use my income from client work to pay for my art supplies. So that's another reason why I'm mentioning this right now, because it does really help me out if you become a patron. But I also want to keep in mind that everyone is different and I have a diverse audience. So I want to make sure that I provide value to my audience in giving them the sort of rewards that they actually want to see. So please do comment if you are the type of person who would like to support me as an artist and you have a particular reward that you would like to see. So like a printable or a digital asset or tutorials or just like a live paint session on a Friday, that would be totally awesome. I'm down. I have the setup ready to go and I would love to offer that. So please just give me a shout out and let me know what you'd like to see. I just wanted to comment briefly about this background that I'm doing because it is wild. I did not expect to be painting this behind the banana, but for some reason my psyche was telling me you need to do a warm background. I wanted to comment and say typically you do not do a warm background behind a subject because you want the background to fall back. But for some reason, the flesh tones were just calling to me that day, and I just needed to paint a warm background. So now you're going to see me try and correct the perspective issues of having the foreground and the background, kind of melting together. And I mix a kind of blue tone that I think would look really beautiful next to the banana. But do keep in mind, if you paint blue next to yellow, it can make your eye see green. So I don't recommend using these kind of complementary colors all the time next to each other, but it is really fun to experiment. And I think, no matter what you're doing, you should just do whatever your heart desires, because that's what art is about. And I teach that in my course, that some people, I've had art instructors tell me you can't do that, like it's against the rules, or you can't paint these colors together, you're gonna create brown. And I'm like, well, it's okay, because if I choose to do that, I'm making that active choice. Like, I'm gonna learn from that experience and I'm gonna move on and I'm gonna paint something new. So I really, really encourage you to be of that mindset where there is no wrong choice, because wrong choices lead to learning experiences. And that's exactly what this is right now. It's a learning experience. You see, I'm trying to blend it in. I'm just doing some glazing to give it that kind of bluish tone. And, you know, it's perfectly okay that there's kind of like a brownish gray behind the banana because the light source is kind of pushing the dark back behind the banana anyways. So you'll see that I'm correcting certain areas and I'm just doing some blending, trying not to pull the color off the page. And like I said, I'm not 100% happy with how this turned out, but I do really love the blue color that I used behind the banana. And I think that it was a really interesting choice for this still life. Would I do it again? Probably not. I don't think it was 100% successful. Like there's a lot that I would change, but I do think that the colors are very pretty and I like how the banana turned out. So I hope that you enjoyed watching this video and that you gained some value out of it, at least watching me build up the detail on the banana itself. And, you know, tune in next week. I publish videos pretty much every week and I do tutorials on different subjects that you're going to paint and common topics of things that you're going to run into that are a challenge with watercolor painting. So I really hope that you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you did. Really helps me out, and check out my Patreon to consider supporting my work if you can. If not, I'll see you next week.